Hey, have you ever wondered what happens when the people you love most, the ones you'd bet your life would always have your back, turn their backs on you right when you need them most? Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a girl who got betrayed in the cruelest way, left high and dry between hope and heartbreak, but rose from the ashes to build a blazing empire all her own. This isn't just a story, it's an emotional roller coaster, a journey that'll make you laugh, cry, and maybe even slam your fist on the table in rage. I swear every second of this tale will glue you to the screen, heart pounding, yelling, "Oh my God, how does life get this wild?" So hit that like button right now, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you don't miss a single drop of drama. Buckle up, because we're diving into a ride full of tears, laughs, and twists you won't see coming. Rain poured down in sheets, icy drops stabbing through Seattle's gray sky, turning the streets into a shimmering mirror reflecting the blurry neon lights of a city that never sleeps. It was October 12th, and the damp air soaked into a tiny apartment in Capitol Hill, where Lena Carter, 28, stood in front of a fogged-up bathroom mirror. Her hands trembled as she smoothed her messy brown hair, strands sticking together from sweat and nerves. Her green eyes flickered with a mix of grit and worry, like a still lake before a storm hits. She tugged on an old, worn leather jacket, not for the rain, but to hide the wild thumping of her heart, caged and restless in her chest. Today was the grand opening of Lena's Brew, a little coffee shop she'd poured every ounce of sweat, tears, and sleepless nights into making real. But deep in her mind, a raw memory screamed, a scar that never healed from 3 years ago. The day she graduated college, the day that should have been her proudest moment, but turned into a pit of betrayal, shattering her into pieces. 3 years back, May 15th, rare Seattle sunshine blazed down on the University of Washington campus, painting the budding maple trees gold as they swayed in a cool breeze. Lena, 25 then, stood in her purple grad gown, tassel swinging with every step, her heart pounding with excitement and jitters. After 4 years of grinding, late nights slinging drinks at a bar with aching feet, skipping meals to cover tuition with stale bread, staying up studying while beer fumes clung to her uniform, she'd done it. Graduated college. She was the first in her family. Her own spark of hope, proof she could break the cycle of poverty and failure her folks had been stuck in for generations. She pictured her parents, Frank and Diane Carter, front row, clapping like crazy. Mom's eyes sparkling with tears, Dad growling, "Told ya, my girl's the best." She'd called them for months, texted every day that last week, voice brimming with hope. "Graduation's at 10 a.m. Please come, just for an hour." They promised. They always promised, sweet as honey. But now she knew those were just slick lies. When she walked across that stage, diploma in hand from the dean, a beaming smile lighting up her face like sunshine in winter, she scanned the packed stands. Empty seats. The 2 chairs she'd reserved, carefully scribbled Frank and Diane, in black marker on white paper, and taped down so no one could snag them, sat there like twin thorns stabbing her heart, sharp and ruthless. The crowd cheered, her friends whooped, shouts ringing out as she held her diploma high, but all that noise just made the silence from those chairs deafening. Lena stood there, the diploma suddenly heavy as a rock, her smile freezing, icy and stiff. She felt eyes on her, classmates, professors, other families, like pins pricking her skin, as if they saw the absence too, whispering, "She's been ditched." Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a sharp little jolt cutting through the moment. She fumbled it out, hands shaking, hoping for an excuse, an apology, some tiny lifeline to soothe her bleeding heart. Nope. A text from Jake, her 24-year-old brother, the golden boy her parents treated like a king in their crumbling family. "Mom and Dad are at my game. We won big. Sorry they couldn't make it, sis." Lena stared at the screen, fingers trembling, breath catching in her throat like an invisible hand was choking her. Jake's basketball game, some meaningless pickup match, had stolen her biggest day. She texted back, each word ripping her apart, like blood seeping from a wound. "I reminded them for months. Just 1 hour, Jake. 1 hour." No reply. just cold, cutting silence, like the wind whipping through campus, dragging her last shred of trust into the abyss. She stood there in the glowing crowd, but felt marooned on a deserted island, tears spilling quietly, soaking her gown's collar. Friends swarmed her, patting her back, chirping, "Where's your folks, Lena? They must be so proud." She forced a smile, voice cracking like a snapped guitar string. "They're busy. Family stuff." But inside, she knew it wasn't true. They weren't busy. They chose Jake. They always chose Jake, like they had for 10 years, from when she was a scrawny kid with big, hopeful eyes to a 25-year-old woman with a heart full of scars. Back to that rainy Seattle day, Lena stood in Lena's brew, her eyes tracing every detail she and Ethan, her boyfriend, 30, a carpenter with calloused hands and a crooked smile warm as winter sun, had built with love and grit. The place was cozy, red brick walls weathered like they held a lifetime of stories, the rich smell of roasting coffee chasing off the damp chill outside. Gleaming wooden tables, sanded smooth by Ethan's hands, dangled soft yellow lights like tiny stars, and a big chalkboard hung on the wall, scrawled in Lena's messy handwriting, "Welcome to Lena's Brew, where every cup tells a story." This wasn't just a coffee shop. It was her fortress, living proof she could stand tall, proud, and bright without her old family, the ones who'd turned her into a walking ATM, draining her strength and youth for a decade. Since she was 18, Frank and Diane had made Lena their lifeline, like a cow milked dry with no rest. Frank, a mechanic who barely worked, always whined about his bad knee to guilt her into cash for beer, electric bills, or fixing his rusty truck he rarely drove beyond the bar. He'd had big hands that once hoisted her onto his shoulders as a kid, but now they just reached out, begging, his gravelly voice barking through the phone. "Lena, I need $200. Just this once, kid." Diane, hooked on TV shopping, sobbed like the world was ending when Lena refused to fund her book club membership she bragged about, but barely attended. She'd sung Lena lullabies, hugged her tight when bullies made her cry. But now she just cooed, "You're my responsible girl," in that syrupy, manipulative tone. "You're my hope, Lena. Don't let me down." And Jake, oh, Jake. He was their little prince, the shining star in their dark, broken family. Pampered like a treasure. He got Nike basketball shoes, hundreds a pair, plane tickets to out-of-state games, cheers every time he scored, while Lena slaved at night shifts in a bar, beer and smoke clinging to her hair as she collapsed over textbooks with stinging eyes. She'd skipped sleep, meals, anything to keep her family afloat. She'd starved for a week, living on dry bread and water, to send $500 for Frank's knee surgery when he wouldn't apply for aid. She'd pulled extra shifts, feet screaming, so Diane wouldn't lose her precious club spot. She'd emptied her savings, cash she'd scraped for a beat-up car, so Jake could fly to California for a tournament he didn't even win. But graduation day, when she needed them most, they picked him. They picked his pointless game over the diploma she'd bled, sweated, and cried for. Lena cut them off after that, but it wasn't a clean break. She called Frank that night, alone in her tiny rental, streetlights casting faint gold streaks on the walls. Her voice shook but held firm. "Why didn't you come? You knew it was my biggest day." He roared back, voice rough with beer and smoke, each word a knife to her chest. "Who do you think you are demanding I show up? Jake needed me more. His game mattered more than your damn paper. You're tough, Lena. You didn't need us there." Gee. His words were thunder, smashing her last hope, a tornado ripping through every sweet memory of him as her hero. She hung up, tears streaming like rain, hot and salty on her lips. But then she stood, wiped her face with her sleeve, and swore to herself in the quiet room, "I won't let them drag me down again. Ever." From then on, no more money, no replies to Mom's begging texts. "Lena, I need 100 for the power bill. Help me out." Or "Dad's sick. Send some cash for meds." No care for relatives' gossip that Lena ditched her family, so ungrateful. She blocked their numbers, erased every trace, and started from scratch, hands empty but heart scarred. She wasn't alone, though. Ethan walked into her life a month after graduation, finding her alone in a dingy coffee shop near campus, staring at rain through the window, eyes red from crying. He slid over with a latte, his crooked smile cutting through the gloom. "Hey, you look like you need coffee more than a rain show." She laughed, first time in days, and from there, he became her rock, piecing her broken heart back together with gentle, steady love. The grand opening of Lena's Brew was an emotional whirlwind, a day where her dreams and fears crashed like waves on rocks. The coffee grinder roared, steam from the espresso machine scalded the air, rising like tiny clouds. Customers lined up outside, dripping wet coats puddling the wood floor. Lena darted around, pouring lattes with silky designs, smiling at everyone. But her heart thumped like it had burst, each beat shouting, "Can I do this? Am I enough?" An old lady with silver hair, Mary from down the street, grabbed her hand over the counter, cloudy eyes warm. "Sweetie, this coffee takes me back to winter mornings at my old place, brewing for my husband on that creaky stove." Lena grinned, tears prickling from the joy, feeling every drop of sweat pay off in those kind words. Then the door chime rang, a shrill note slicing through the cozy buzz, like a knife through silk. She looked up, and her blood froze, icy to the bone. Jake stood there, tall in a ratty basketball hoodie, muddy old Nikes squeaking, his brown eyes, so like hers, cold and distant beyond memory. He shuffled in, broad shoulders slouched, like he carried something heavy no one could see. "Lena," he said, voice low and awkward, stepping toward the counter, shoes screeching on the wood. "You've done good. Place looks great." Lena stopped cold, the cappuccino in her hand nearly crashing down, foam sloshing over. She stared at him, anger surging, hot as fire in her chest. "What do you want, Jake? Why the hell are you here?" He shrugged, smirking like he always did to play innocent, but his eyes betrayed unease. "Mom and Dad sent me. They're in bad shape, sis. House is about to be foreclosed. I'm out of basketball with a busted hamstring. Doc says I'm done. They think you can help." Sorrow. Lena let out a harsh laugh, dry and sharp, echoing over the shop's noise like a growl held back too long. "Help? After they picked your game over my graduation? After they bled me dry for 10 years so you could have new kicks, plane tickets, and that basketball star title that's worth squat now? You kidding me, Jake?" He stepped closer, hands in his pockets, voice dropping but edged with defiance, like a kid backed into a corner. "Sis, I know they messed up. I didn't want them to skip your day. I told them to go, but they wouldn't listen. But they're falling apart now. Dad's drinking all day, Mom's crying nonstop, selling stuff to pay debts. I can't handle it alone, Lena." She locked eyes with him, fury blazing like an unstoppable flame, burning away every memory of the little brother she'd once adored. "Then you handle it, Jake. I've done enough. 10 years starving so they could eat, working myself to death so you could shine on the court. I'm not your family's lifeboat anymore, and sure as hell not yours." He stepped back, face flushing with anger, voice snarling like a wounded animal. "You're so selfish, Lena. They're our parents. You can't turn your back on blood over one day they missed." "Blood?" she shouted, voice breaking, slamming her hand on the counter so hard the mugs rattled, tears spilling hot and fast. "They chose you, Jake. They picked your dumb pickup game over the diploma I bled for. They called me the responsible one and drained me dry, while you partied and got praised for tossing a ball through a hoop. I'm not their daughter anymore, and you're not my brother." Customers turned, whispers rippling like waves, some sneaking phones out to record the showdown. Ethan strode from the back, tall in his rolled-up flannel, green eyes flashing worry and rage. He put a hand on Lena's shoulder, voice low but solid as bedrock. "You need to leave, Jake. Lena's made it clear." Jake glared at Ethan, eyes darkening, then turned to Lena, voice dropping, almost pleading, trembling like he might cry. "Just once, sis. They've got no one. I'm begging you. I don't want to see Dad die in that rusty truck." She turned away, tears streaming, but kept her voice steel cold. "They've got you. Now get out of my shop before I call security, Jake. Don't push me. He stood there, fists clenched, breath heavy like a cornered beast. Then he slammed the doorframe, the bell clanging wild, metal crashing sharp as a final scream before he stormed into the rain. The glass shook from the blow, and Lena watched his shape fade into the gray downpour, her legs wobbling like they'd give out. Ethan hugged her from behind, his warmth seeping through her jacket like a blanket, rough hands stroking her back. "You okay, Lena?" he murmured, soft but worried. She nodded, though her heart shattered again, bits falling like broken glass in her chest. But this time, she didn't crumble. She turned back to the counter, kept pouring coffee, her forced smile turning real as customers raved about the espresso's bold kick, as Mary beamed and said, "Honey, you're this neighborhood's pride." She'd chosen herself, and Lena's brew was living proof she didn't need her old family to shine, to live, to breathe. But the drama didn't stop there, not with the Carters involved. 2 months later, Lena's brew blew up on Instagram. Latte art pics of hearts, maple leaves, snowflakes spreading like wildfire. Tagged Cyril Lena's Brew Seattle. Customers flocked from all over, suits with bulging briefcases, hipsters in oversized glasses and chunky scarves, old-timers sipping black coffee for hours. Lena barely slept, 4 hours a night tops. Her hands blistered from the espresso machine, red and raw every time she touched cold water. But she didn't quit. Every cup sold was a brick in her dream, every customer's grin a cool balm on her wounded heart. Ethan was there every step, not just her boyfriend, but her steadiest partner. He fixed wobbly tables after busy days, his carpenter hands reinforcing every joint and edge. He cracked jokes to lift her when she was wiped, eyes bloodshot from no sleep. "You're a coffee superhero, Lena. Marvel's missing out, keeping you here brewing for these caffeine fiends." She'd laugh, leaning into him, soaking in the warmth of the guy who'd picked up her heart's shards and patched them with love tough as oak. But it wasn't all sunshine. One night, working till 2 a.m., on a big order, 50 coffees for a local company gig, Ethan came in, eyes tight with worry. "Lena, you gotta rest. You can't keep going like this. Look at your hands, all burned, and you're wasting away." She snapped back, stress sharpening her tone. "I can't stop, Ethan. This is everything I've got." He went quiet, then pulled her close, voice steady. "You've got me too. Don't kill yourself over this place, okay?" She melted into him, tears falling from exhaustion, knowing he was right. Then, one evening, as she cleaned up after a long day, a letter slipped under the door, hitting the wood floor with a soft rustle like dry leaves in the wind. Diane's shaky handwriting, scrawled like her life. "Lena, my sweet girl, I'm sorry about that day. Dad's sick, house is going, Jake can't help. I'm begging you, just a little, to get us through this winter. I know you're mad, but we're family, baby." Lena grabbed it, fingers crushing the paper, each word a knife in her heart, deep and aching. No love, no "how are you," just desperation and demands. The same old song she'd heard 100 times, keeping her up nights scrambling for cash she didn't have. She crumpled it, tossed it in the trash, but a storm raged inside, dragging her back to memories she'd tried to bury. That night, she sat with Ethan on their apartment's couch, streetlights streaking gold across the walls like scars that wouldn't fade. She handed him the letter she'd fished out, voice tiny, scared of his answer, scared of herself. "What do you think, Ethan? What do I do with this?" He brushed her hair, green eyes locking on hers with a mix of steel and softness, like a lighthouse in the dark. "They don't deserve you, Lena. Never have. They're back because they've got no one left, because everything they built on your back's crashing down. But if you want to help, I've got your back. Just don't let them drag you under again. You've come too far to fall into that hole." She leaned into him, tears rolling hot and salty, soaking his shirt. "I don't want to. I swear I don't. But why does it still hurt? Why do I feel guilty thinking about ditching them when they ditched me first?" He held her tighter, voice deep as a vow. "Because you're human, Lena. You loved them, hoped they'd change, dreamed they'd see you like they saw Jake. But they didn't, And you don't have to pay for their selfishness anymore. You've earned your life, your happiness. She nodded, pressing her face to his chest, his steady heartbeat a lullaby guiding her through the dark. She chose not to reply. Instead, she threw herself into Lena's brew, turning pain into fuel, tears into drive. The shop grew, a bigger spot in Tacoma with sleek oak tables Ethan built, a coffee truck rolling into Pike Place on weekends, painted green with a bold Lena's Brew logo. She became Seattle's darling, the young woman with a radiant smile and coffees that told tales of grit, of rising after brutal falls, of finding light in choking darkness. But life never let her rest, always tossing one more test her way. One freezing winter day, snow blanketing Seattle in a hazy white shroud, Frank and Diane showed up. They stood outside Lena's Brew, shivering in thin, torn coats, faces gaunt like time had chewed them up and spat them out, ghosts from her past haunting her again. Lena was wiping the counter, hands freezing when she saw them through the frosty glass, breath catching like a fist squeezed her throat. Frank, once tall with broad shoulders and a booming voice, now hunched, gray hair thinning, eyes bloodshot from booze and sickness, hands trembling as he gripped the doorframe. Diane, once prim with silk scarves and perfume, now a frail shadow, bony hands clutching a ripped purse, eyes red from crying. Ethan stood beside Lena, green eyes flaring with anger and fear, whispering, "Let me get rid of them, Lena. You don't have to face this." She shook her head, stepping out, arms crossed tight, breath fogging in the biting air. "What do you want?" Diane lunged forward, tears pouring like rain, voice cracking like melting ice. "Lena, we screwed up. Dad's got lung cancer. House is gone. We've been living in the truck for a week, sleeping in the back of that rusty heap. Please, you're our last hope." Frank, weaker than she'd ever seen, mumbled through chapped lips, voice raspy and fading. "I'm sorry, kid. I picked the wrong day. Didn't think it'd end like this. Didn't think I'd lose everything." Lena stood there, wind slicing her skin, heart twisting like it was caught in a vice. She remembered Frank teaching her to ride a bike on the dirt road behind their house. His rough laugh when she fell, his big hands lifting her up. She remembered Diane singing her to sleep, voice soft as a summer breeze, gentle hands stroking her hair after nightmares. But then she saw those empty chairs at graduation, years of hunger so they could eat, calls begging for cash with no "how are you," and how they'd tossed her aside when she needed them, like she was a tool, not a person. "Why didn't you come that day?" she asked, voice breaking, tears spilling free, rolling down her cheeks like ice melting in the snow. Diane sobbed, clutching Frank's arm like he'd collapse, voice shaking. "Jake threatened to run off if we went. Said he'd never forgive us if we didn't cheer him on. We were scared of losing him, Lena." Lena laughed, a jagged, aching sound echoing in the snow, sharp as shattered glass. "But you weren't scared of losing me. You picked him, his tantrum, over my pride. You thought I'd always be there, fixing everything, paying for your lives, right?" Frank looked up, bloodshot eyes flickering with a last spark of anger, voice faint. "I was wrong, Lena. Thought you were strong, you'd get it. Didn't know I'd lose you." "Strong?" she yelled, stepping closer, breath clouding thick in the chill. "I was strong because I had to be. I'm not a machine, Dad. I needed you. Just once. Just one day. But you never saw me. You saw Jake, your star, while I was just your cash machine." Diane reached out, trembling fingers brushing Lena's jacket. But she jerked back, tears streaming hot. "Don't touch me. You erased me when you disowned me 3 years ago, when you said you're not my daughter, because I stopped paying. Now you're back because you're out of options. Jake's gone. Money's dry. I'm not your fix anymore. Never again." Frank's shoulders shook, maybe from cold, maybe regret, voice hoarse. "I don't want to die on the street, Lena. Don't want your mom sleeping in that truck when it's snowing like this." She stared at him, voice quiet but cutting, cold as the ice around her. "Maybe I'm heartless. Maybe I learned it from you. Good luck. You'll need it more than ever. She turned back inside, locked the door, the click ringing like a gunshot, final and unyielding. Diane crumpled on the sidewalk, cries blending with the howling wind, high and desperate. Frank pounded the glass, shouting something muffled, blood trickling from his knuckles. But Lena didn't hear, didn't want to. She slid down behind the counter, tears pouring like a flood, arms hugging her knees, body shaking from cold and the pain exploding in her chest. Ethan knelt beside her, pulling her close, his warmth wrapping her like a shield against the storm outside. "Did I do the right thing, Ethan?" She choked, face pressed to his chest, tears soaking his shirt. He kissed her forehead, voice deep and sure as an oath. "You chose yourself, Lena. That's the truest thing you've ever done. They can't steal your light anymore." She nodded, leaning into him, letting his heat soothe the raw wounds tearing her soul. That night, she took every memory of them. Old fairground photos from when she was little, begging letters, a birthday card from Mom saying, "You're my pride," that now rang hollow, to the apartment's backyard. She lit a fire, watching them burn to ash, orange flames licking each scrap, washing away the simmering pain like a tide cleaning the shore. She stood there, snowflakes glinting around her, sticking to her hair and coat, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt light, like she'd shed a heavy chain from her neck, freed from an invisible cell. But the story didn't end there. Lena's brew didn't just survive that harsh winter. It thrived, blooming like a flower through ice. The Tacoma spot became a local gem, packed on weekend nights with folks sipping lattes to acoustic tunes. The Pike Place truck drew hundreds daily, tourists with dangling cameras to fishmongers from the market, all craving Lena's story in a cup. It wasn't all smooth, though. A month after facing her parents, she landed her biggest order yet, 200 coffees for a downtown Seattle business conference. She and Ethan worked nonstop, dawn to midnight, but the main espresso machine broke, smoke billowing from the motor, leaving her with a pile of orders and no gear. She sank to the shop floor, head in hands, tears falling from stress. "I can't do it, Ethan. I'll lose everything. This client's too big." He crouched down, pulling her in, voice steady as stone. "You're not losing a thing. I'll fix this machine, even if I'm up all night. Just trust me, okay?" He did. Awake till 4 a.m., hands black with grease, face smudged. But the machine hummed again, and they delivered on time. The conference was a hit, and the company became a weekly regular. Lena hugged Ethan after, tears of gratitude falling. "You're everything I need, Ethan." He grinned, that crooked smile glowing. "And you're all I want, Lena." 3 years later, Lena stood in the third Lena's Brew in Portland, 8 months pregnant, belly peeking under her coffee-stained apron, hands gently rubbing it with a tender smile. She and Ethan named their daughter Nora, fresh, free of past burdens. No echoes of Frank, Diane, or Jake. Lena's Brew was a small empire in the Northwest, 3 shops and a truck, dubbed Seattle's Coffee Queen by the press. A local mag ran her story, from a girl ditched by family to a symbol of grit, with a photo of her beaming beside Ethan, holding a perfect heart latte, eyes shining with pride no one could take. Her life was a warm painting now, rich with color and hope. Ethan, with his carpenter magic, built Nora a smooth oak crib, sanding it silky, carving her name in soft swirls like a poem. He still teased her every morning, sneaking a waffle bite from her oven, grinning, "Nora's gonna love this, you're a kitchen rock star." She'd laugh, swatting him with a towel, heart overflowing, not for the shops, not the fame, but this family she chose, one that never left her. They lived in a little house Ethan fixed up outside Portland, creaky wood floors, and a wildflower garden where marigolds danced golden in the breeze. Frank and Diane faded from her life after that snowy day, ghosts dissolving into the night. Word trickled through relatives' short calls. They holed up in a dingy Tacoma apartment near the tracks. Frank sober some days, but fading. Diane working part-time at a convenience store, hands shaking as she bagged goods. Jake, post-injury, Quit basketball, drifting with a rough crew, never reaching out to them or Lena. Once, she glimpsed him on a Seattle street, thin in a torn hoodie, eyes empty as he stared from afar. But he didn't approach, and she didn't look back. They were shadows dimming with each sunrise, and she let them go. Not with anger, but peace, like dropping a dead leaf into a river. One spring afternoon, standing in their backyard, sunlight filtering through trees onto her face, Lena rested a hand on her belly, feeling Nora kick hard, tiny thumps reminding her she'd broken her family's curse. She gazed at the wildflower field, marigolds swaying bright, and smiled, soft but fierce. Her family was this: Ethan, Nora, friends who stayed when she needed them, and coffees telling her tale. A story of a girl once abandoned, but who found herself, betrayed but rebuilt from ashes. She'd been Frank and Diane's daughter, Jake's sister, but now she was Lena Carter, wife, mom, and queen of her own empire, built not on sacrifice, but love and grit. So, what do you think of Lena's journey? She fought through thick darkness, won with her own strength, and found blazing light after betrayal and abandonment. If this hit your heart, smash that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments. Ever had to shut a door to open a new one? Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories. Thanks for riding this long haul with me, through tears, laughs, and unforgettable moments. Catch you in the next tale, full of drama, heart, and hope.